I need a haircut. Hello. Welcome. First, I have a quick little thing that I want to talk about, and then Russ, you might have something too, because Russ always has something to say, which is great. But here's my little thing to say. Texting of a teacher of my son's, because he's missed a lot of school, he's got medical issues, so I'm going back and forth on how we can fix, how we can make up stuff and stuff like that. And she texted me yesterday during the trade, or 2 days ago during the trade deadline, and I was just like, it was like 2:30. Things were nuts. I was like, I'm right in the middle of the trade deadline. Please, and she didn't really know what that meant, because why would she? She doesn't know what I do necessarily. So she's like, trade deadline. I'm like, oh, I'm a hockey writer, hockey trade deadline, and whatever, we'll talk later. She's like, no problem. She's like, and then 5 minutes later, she's like, just give me a time when you want to talk later. And I was like, so I just I type back 1 sec, and but that autocorrects to 1 sex, which stays there for a day. She doesn't respond to that at all after I say that. And I'm like, so my thing with Apple is this: like, why in the world would you autocorrect sec to sex? Explain this to me.
Because what's the benefit? Because sec is an abbreviation for seconds, and they're looking for a 3-letter word that starts.
You're right. You're right, but this should be acceptable. This is a very acceptable text messaging thing. Like, this should be like, somehow it doesn't take a lot of code to write SEC as a word into the dictionary.
Well, I'll give you a comparative to that one. The fact that, like, I was going to write something about the winners and losers of the trade deadline, and was texting it in my phone, and it came out winners and lovers.
I've done that. That's happened with me.
I type it in. I don't use voice activated.
No,
I don't do it.
No, not voice activating.
It's not even that. It's like, what it does is I typed in losers, and it converted it to lovers.
I know. I've had mine convert to something when you post online and you see it. Yeah,
it's annoying as hell. It's all hell, and it's embarrassing as all hell.
So I did two small things.
I wrote Fiala was going, because Fiala had like a hat trick, right? And I wrote Fiala, and my thing wouldn't accept Fiala because it's not a word. And it kept autocorrecting Fiala to goals, which is really hilarious because he was scoring a hat trick. Fiala does autocorrect to goals. Like, if you might try it on your phones, but it's like interesting because the letters are all basically around the same spot.
Right.
Fiala.
It's ALA for Fiala, and it's ALS for goals.
Right. And you look at the S is right next to the A. F is next to a G. So it's like, it's easy for go to and
I and O are vowels. Yeah. So okay, go ahead, Russ.
Two small things. While I was
perfectly goals. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah. Well, I was working on an article for my website on who might win the MVP award this year in Major League Baseball, American and National League. I started looking it up, and in the National League, pitchers don't generally win. Like, Bob Gibson won in '68. It took all the way till Kershaw till 2014 to win it. But I was like, there was a great relief pitcher one year that I thought would have won it, and his name was Mike Marshall. And so I looked up Marshall, and I was 11 when he pitched. He actually pitched 208 innings in relief. He pitched in 102 games, 102. And he actually closed out 83 of them. Wow. He had 15 wins and 21 saves. And so I looked at it, and I'm like, who won the MVP that year? Same team, Steve Garvey. And I'm like, Mike Marshall should have won the MVP. There is no question. You can't tell me this guy wasn't more valuable than Steve Garvey based on everything he was doing to keep that pitching staff together. But I just thought it was interesting.
And this is the era of the 2 to 3 inning reliever, not one coming in the 9th inning.
Well, clearly 2, right? Because he pitched 102 games.
Yeah,
which is nuts. The other dumb thing for Major League Baseball is now they're in the minor leagues. They're going to test moving the mound back 12 inches. I want to tell you, there's a reason that the mound is 60 feet 6 inches. It's not like just some dumb guy woke up one day and said, "Hey, I'm just going to make up these measurements for a baseball field," and that's that. There's a reason it's been the way it is for over 100 years. There is a reason. And now you're going to F with that by moving it back 12 inches because you want more offense. What I don't understand about this sport, and again, I don't care about younger viewers anymore. You're not getting them. If you want to get better offense in this sport, it is going to just have to come naturally. You can't do it. You can't contrive it. It doesn't work.
Does Rob Manfred realize that all these pitchers have been trained on a mound at a certain height at a certain distance? And I'm not saying this out of spite to relievers or starters, because I don't want to see this happen, but I hope they change this distance and move it back 12 inches, and then you have a rash of Tommy John surgeries because
Right.
they have thrown their arms out of their sockets.
The stupidest thing ever. I've heard about that. For them to think about moving that, that's so.
God,
They're gonna test it in certain places in the minor leagues, and it's just like Mike said. You've trained your whole life like this on a mound like this, and now you're gonna change it just like midstream. You're not gonna change it on any level. And you're just going to, let's just try it out, see if it creates more offense. Like, you don't do this with games. I get that the NHL also messed around with things. They had that little camp to do it. That's fine. That's in a controlled little thing. They're not doing it in a league where you're trying to develop. That's a whole different thing.
I never thought I'd say it, Russ, but bring back Bud Selig.
Oh my God.
I'm going to try this code instead. If the other way, if this not cutting out, tell me this. Okay. If this cuts out, we know it's my internet, Mike. But we'll see.
All right.
Let me know, because I'm sorry about the cutting in and out thing.
All right.
So, okay, here we go. Ready? The 14th, right? Yep, sure. Hello, Hockey World is Wednesday, April 14th, 2021.
That sounded so convincing. I'm Michael Agello.
I'm just going from Sportsology. I'm on a show where the date is optional.
You're living in a world where the day is optional. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast at HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday, or whatever those are, to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. They're the 5 days that most people decide to work, I guess. But anyway, we're a 7 day a week sport, and today I wanted to get into something different because I'm doing my projected final standings. I'm doing it differently this year. I'm not going to put it up every single day. I have some ideas and some concepts on things, and I'm really going deeper into experimenting with it than ever before, since this is such a short season the rest of the way. But in doing that, I have all these factors I throw in. So I've got some really interesting factors that are kind of bizarre in the Northern Division that you might not know, or some of you might know them, but they're kind of surprising. And first, I'm going to start off with what the projected final standings would be in this division, which is interesting because obviously Toronto is going to win this division, and that's not a hard job. But I've got finished with 77 points, and that's so they'll get that's like getting 17 points against the rest of the way, somewhere in there. They're getting 77 points, and so second place. It is a battle, like second place. We've talked about Winnipeg and Edmonton. Winnipeg, Edmonton. Right now, Winnipeg's up by 1 point. They play the same amount of games. It's really quite a race. Actually, the way it works out in my projected that they will win by, they'll win by 1 point. So it'll be end up the same. So they'll have 68 points to Edmonton 67, then Montreal 62, and then Calgary and Vancouver, right? 56 and 55. So that's 5 points less. So Calgary misses by 5 points, right? So you're thinking to yourself, how can Calgary possibly make the playoffs? How can Vancouver possibly make the playoffs? I'll get to that. There are ways, and these aren't likely ways, but I just want to paint the scenario for everybody of how they could do it, because based on who they're playing. But I think those aren't surprising to anybody, right? That's basically how we all think it's going to play out,
right?
Okay. I think so. I think so too. But here's so let's get to some interesting statistics in this thing. So we look at Vancouver for a second, okay? Vancouver, they have a lot of games left. Obviously, they've got 5 against Edmonton. Okay, 5. So they've got 5 games left against Edmonton, which is kind of crazy. They've got 4 games left against Toronto, 4 games left against Calgary, and 4 games left against Ottawa. So they're playing a bunch of games, right? But the interesting thing is their goal differential. Okay, if you take out they're plus 15 this year against Ottawa. Okay, they are. So the goal differential plus 15 against Ottawa. So their goal differential in the league actually right now is what, like a minus 20 something right here. So this is what I thought was cool. They're plus they're plus 15 against Ottawa. They are minus 15 against one of the other teams in the division, goal differential. So can you guess who that would be? I mean, it's just kind of crazy. I mean, I'm sure Vancouver fans know. But they are minus 15 against the Montreal Canadiens. The Canucks have been killed by the Montreal Canadiens. Like they've absolutely destroyed them. The good news for them is they don't play the Canadiens again this year.
Yeah, I think it would be because of the physical nature that the Canadiens play. Yeah.
Well, it was
Vancouver doesn't play physical at all.
Yeah, but it was mostly on. Remember that happened mostly in the first couple weeks of the season when they played Vancouver like 5 times. Vancouver got off to a bad start, and Montreal was hotter than a barbecue. Yeah. So
it's true at Vancouver, and that is a really good point, Mike, because that is how Vancouver can make the playoffs. Because this is the deal with them. Their games against. I mean, they're playing Calgary. Like I said, how many times is it? 4 times. Yep. Vancouver, here we go. Vancouver, they're playing Edmonton 5 times, Toronto 4 times. Okay, Calgary 4 times. The thing about Toronto's games, they played 5 times so far, because remember teams in the North play 9 or 10 times, depending where you are.
Right.
So the thing about that's really interesting with them playing Toronto is they've won so far. They played 6. No, they've won 3 of the. Yeah, no, they've won the last 3 games against Toronto. Right, they won the last 3 games. So, and against Calgary, against Edmonton, I mean, they've won 2 of the last 3 and lost the other in overtime. So there's.
Well, I hate to throw this all this statistical analysis out, but when it comes to Vancouver, I think overriding the statistics is the post-COVID situation.
Right. We don't even know what they're playing.
They're not. I'm sorry. Buffalo was devastated by the post-COVID. New Jersey for a time was as well. Dallas got off to a quick start. Then they slumped. I'm sorry. I don't care what the stats say. Vancouver is going to struggle coming back.
Yeah, we don't even know if they're playing Friday. They say they are, and they haven't played in a long time.
Well, of course we don't know, and statistics are what they are, But also the thing that you can look at here is the benefit of playing Toronto and Edmonton, who are 2 of the top teams in the division, that many times. Is there's a good chance Toronto and Edmonton won't care about a lot of those games. And I think that could also play into it. Like Toronto and Edmonton are going to be in, right? So they're going to be, especially Toronto, they're not going to care about this game.
But Toronto has got something to play for, even though, not to say they're home and cooled out in the North, because right now they're up by 7 points. They're playing Winnipeg 4 more times. So, there's still a chance that they could finish in second. Remember, the playoff seeding is based on best record. So especially when you go to a semifinal situation, if you have the best record in the league, you're going to play the team with the 4th best record. If you're the President's Trophy winner, the last thing the Leafs want to do is have to go through Tampa and then somebody else.
So right now, as it plays out, I've done only 2 of these divisions. Okay. So I've done the East and I've done the North. Like I said, Toronto finishes with 77 points. Atop the Eastern Division would be Washington with 79. Okay, so they are like you say, Mike. They do have something to play for there. They would follow 2 points behind the Capitals, and then it's almost a dead heat because the Islanders are also 79 points. They would just lose out on tiebreakers. Like Washington and the Islanders are both gearing towards basically the same number. So that is really kind of. I think kind of interesting, but we'll get more to that later. There's some real anomalies which are fun. So let's talk about the Maple Leafs for a second. The Maple Leafs have, they've got a really solid goal differential against. Obviously, they're one of the best goal differentials in the league. And I guess it's not hard for you, Mike, to guess who they have the largest goal differential against. Because you've made it known to me plenty of times who Toronto has the largest goal differential against.
Yeah, probably the Civ Edmonton Oilers.
Right, they're plus 11 on the season against the Oilers.
Yeah.
So against Winnipeg, you say they have a bunch of games against them. They're only a +2 against Winnipeg so far this year.
Yeah, Winnipeg's a good team.
Yeah, when I've looked at this, I realized that a lot of teams, even though Toronto, what I see from these statistics is Toronto has found ways to win a lot of games. Like there are a lot of tight games in here. They have a much better record than these differentials would play out. You're +3 against Montreal, which is tighter than I thought it would be. +4 against Calgary. Sorry about the dog. And then a +7 against Vancouver, and only a +8 against Ottawa. So They are, or no, only a +4 against Ottawa. Sorry, a +4 against Ottawa.
Yeah, Ottawa has spattled them tough.
Yeah, Ottawa has. Ottawa actually has an average of See, one of the things I did with this was how many points you get on an average when you play a team, because of this 3-point system. That's really important. Ottawa has averaged 0.88 points against Toronto every game. So that's something that they're almost, that means like basically they're getting a lot of 1-point losses or things like that. So, that to me is kind of cool. Where Toronto against Ottawa has averaged only 1.2 points per game. So you're not looking at like a big, you're looking at like they're not getting 2 points all the time either. So yeah, Toronto has there's some interesting facts I thought for the Maple Leafs. The Edmonton-Winnipeg battle. How do you guys think that's going to play out? That to me is a really interesting one. It's very tight. Obviously, it's really tight.
I think Winnipeg will prevail because of the goaltending. That's what I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, the goaltending is there. Winnipeg has Winnipeg's schedule is pretty beneficial to them. Although Calgary actually has Calgary has the most beneficial schedule of any team in that division, which is another reason they have a shot. The big thing with Calgary and Montreal, for Calgary to catch Montreal, Calgary plays Montreal 5 times. There's still 5 times left. So even though
they're not going to catch Montreal, though.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to catch Montreal either. But they so far in the 4 games they played against Montreal are 3-1. So they've won 3 out of 4. If they continue that kind of trend, maybe they win 4 out of 5. They're still not going to catch Montreal. The other things have to happen, but they have to keep Montreal from getting any points in those games. Those are like Calgary beating. Calgary beating Montreal in regulation is the key. That's the
okay. I'm gonna bring up something to you, Ek, that the Bruins did last night that a team like Montreal will do. If a game is close and it is in the 3rd period and it's within like 11 minutes to go in the game, they are going to ride it out to overtime to get a point, and that suffocates the competition.
It does. We're seeing that already. I mean, it's amazing. Like when you look at this, when I see how many points per game teams have against other teams, it's amazing how even teams that are getting beaten up by the other team are still like at 0.7 points per game type thing. It's kind of crazy. Like there's nothing. It's strange. You're right, and it's all because of the 3-point game, which is such a mess this year. I think this is the year. This would have been the year to try out a 3 points for a regulation win. It would have been amazing. I think this would have been the year for that.
I don't know if you could do that though, because you're only playing in your division, so then it really would skew it. I think. I don't think this would be the year to do it. Actually.
Well, that's why the NHL doesn't do it. The NHL doesn't do it for those reasons you're saying. I mean, they don't. They want to keep it close, so they're trying to keep it close.
They do want to keep it close.
It is artificial, it is definitely artificially kept close because it's just kind of nuts.
As for the Winnipeg Edmonton race.
Mm-hmm.
North, I give Winnipeg the advantage. The only thing I would put as a caveat is if Wheeler's difficulty, I haven't heard anything other than he had a concussion and he was going to be out indefinitely, and he could be back next week or he could be back next game for all I know. I'm just saying if it's a long-term situation, then that puts a crimp in Winnipeg's advantage over Edmonton. When they match up, I think Winnipeg handles Edmonton fairly well.
Very well. I can tell you exactly what they do against them. So far, actually, no, I might be wrong about that. Winnipeg against Edmonton actually has handled Winnipeg very well this year. It's only a +2 goal differential, but Edmonton's getting 1.33 points per game, where Winnipeg's getting 0.67. So that's definitely Montreal's definitely. I mean, Edmonton's getting more points, which means they're getting more wins, obviously. But they're definitely Edmonton has handled Winnipeg very well.
Wait, but who did you say was getting more wins?
Edmonton's getting more wins against Winnipeg.
Okay.
Yeah. So they play each other twice more. So they still have some more times. I have something that I'm going to Mike. You're going to like this because you think I always love Edmonton. I'm going to give you a real big shot at Edmonton right now. That is a problem for sure. Their goal differential is +14 in NHL. Your goal differential against the Ottawa Senators is +23.
Yeah.
All right. So and that is, I know for sure.
They've dined out on them.
They have absolutely dined out on them, and they don't play them any more times, and they won all 9. So they won all 9. It's like, and that's the thing. So they're 9-0, straight up 9-0. Like not, it's just they a +23 goal differential against another team in the NHL is insane. I mean, that's like an insane number. I mean, if you take that out of the situation here, they're a -9 goal differential against the rest of the league.
Yeah, they suck. Seriously, it's like, and it's a statement on that that they've got two of the best players in the league, and they had to go 9-0 against Ottawa to be, to put at least a decent point amount up. That's 18 of their 52 points.
I won't say they suck, but what I'll say is when the rubber meets the road and these playoffs are going to be different, it's going to be different for them. They're not going to have any easy games like they've had in the regular season. None.
No, for sure.
And it's going to be very interesting to see where they get their offense from when in a playoff scenario, and I'm going to use the word target in a sort of predatory way, but other teams are going to target McDavid and Draisaitl. Meaning every chance they get to rub them into the boards, they're going to do it.
There's no question. That's going to hurt. I mean, they have to. I mean, the thing is this: it's hockey, right? So you just make the playoffs, and then everything is what it is, right? So I mean, you can sit there and they haven't had a very good season beyond the Ottawa Senators. That you can sit there and say. But the problem is you put them into a playoff series, and who knows? I mean, they are a really tough team in a playoff series, I think. And yes, you can perhaps match those guys, and that is why they should have gone out and gotten like a Taylor Hall. I thought Taylor Hall would have been a perfect pickup for them to give them something else. But they didn't, and I really think Holland, messed up in this trade deadline.
No, I agree with you on this, Zach, because if you look at it, who their two highest scorers are. Then Tyson Barrie is their next highest scorer. And so Nugent Hopkins is their third best scorer. He's got 28 points. The two highest scorers are in the 60s.
Yeah.
You're not going very far in the playoffs with that.
And I wouldn't be surprised, Russ, if Nugent Hopkins got a majority of those points when they put them all together on the same line or on the power play.
Well, then if you go with that, Darnell Nurse is the next guy with 28. And then Kailer Yamamoto has 18. We talk about the Bruins – and, they're only a one-line team. And it's, partially true because they do get scoring from Richie and a few other guys. This is a one-line team, legitimately.
Yeah, no, there's no question about
and
it.
Not even a one-line team, a two-player team.
It's a two-player team, really, with some offensive defensemen sprinkled in.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question about it. There's no question about that. And there are some. That's a real. I thought that was staggering. I knew they beat up on Ottawa, but I didn't realize how much they beat up on Ottawa. Goal differentials.
I mean, I didn't know it was to that degree. I knew they were beating up on them, though.
Yeah. So that's that is a crazy. Now against the Maple Leafs this year, Edmonton has been, they went 3-5-1. They're -11, so that's their biggest minus because beyond the two teams that it's very interesting. The Maple Leafs -11, the Canadiens -8, and then Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, they have plus goal differences again. So it's like obviously the two Eastern teams, besides Ottawa, who they beat up on, the other two Eastern teams have beaten up on them.
And here's the other thing. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, continue.
The other stat I would like to see, but we're not going to know today, is what is Mike Smith against anybody but Ottawa? Because Koskinen is the clear second in this, and Smith has got a 9. Yeah, you can probably look it up on ESPN. That's true. He's got a .918 percentage. Save percentage, and he's 14-4. But what percentage of that is against Ottawa?
Yeah, I know.
I'll give you the answer in 1 minute here.
Okay, because that's going to tell you where they stand against everybody else. Because again, they're riding Mike Smith. You can't ride Mike Smith for that many rounds.
No, you can't. You can't. There's no question about it. I agree with you. And
Mike
I think
Smith has proven that to everybody.
Okay, here you go. Mike Smith was 4-0 with a 1.25 goals against Ottawa.
There you go.
Okay.
So now he's 10-4, and you said a 1.2, and he's at about what's the save percentage?
Against them was .957.
.957. So that definitely contributed to him being a .918. So Mike Smith's probably like a .910, .907 save percentage on the year. Otherwise,
yeah, and against. Let's see, against Toronto and Winnipeg, he has less than a 900 save percentage, a losing record against Toronto, and a 2-0 record against Winnipeg.
That's really what you're looking at with Edmonton in the playoffs, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, so what's really interesting, now I haven't finished 67 points, right? They play Vancouver 5 more times. They play Montreal 4 more times. So Montreal's, like I said, is giving them trouble. Vancouver, so far, they actually have played pretty well against But say they don't play well against Vancouver. Like say they for some reason, there's 5 games were to lose those 5 games. I'm not saying they will, but if I put that in, their point totals come down to 60, and they are in 4th place, and they're seriously battling. So you assume they're going to get some points out of Vancouver, but I'm just saying that they have to really. The 5 times against Vancouver is huge. And the 4 times against Montreal is just they played Montreal so terribly, really really bad. So that's going to be so a lot depends on. There's still Edmonton's still in a precarious spot, more precarious than people realize. I know, like you realized this all along, but I'm just saying that this is something that I thought was kind of one of the more interesting factors. Some of the best stuff I found on here, like I really think that the whole. So Vancouver has also beaten up on Ottawa. Okay, so Ottawa has 2 teams. Ottawa's goal differential, is not that bad. I mean, when you take out Ottawa, when you take out Edmonton and Vancouver, like those are the 2.
Here's the Ottawa Senators in a thumbnail sketch. They play tough against Montreal. They play tough against Toronto, and they suck against the rest of the Northern Division.
Actually,
yeah.
There's one team that they play really well against too, and I'll give you the exact thing right now. But this surprised me, and I know that there's one more team though that they play well against this year at least, and that team, the record in those games they're 5-2 against the Calgary Flames, 5-2, which is something, I mean, so that's like. And that's the Tkachuk battle. Like to me, that's the battle of the Tkachuks, right? So they're 5-2 against Calgary. But yeah, that's something they're interesting against. Against Montreal, they've got a winning record. Yeah. So Winnipeg's not that bad. Like they're pretty close in Winnipeg.
Yeah. Well, there's been some news over the last half hour that we should mention.
Yeah, we can get into that. I just wanted to get into some of those numbers. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out.
So the Sabres released what I think we were all expecting. Jack Eichel has a herniated disc in his neck, and he is being shut down for the rest of the regular season. He's going to have surgery in anticipation of him being back for training camp. The question is, what training camp? Whether it'll be in Buffalo or someplace else. I still believe the Sabres don't want to trade him.
It'll be in Buffalo.
It'll be in Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not going to trade him. I mean, there's.
Well, but if he goes to the Pagulas or goes to Kevin Adams and says, "Get me the hell out of here,"
he's not going to do that with a herniated disc and getting surgery, because that's a tough injury to rehab. And
he also has a connection to Buffalo, even though it sucks for him in Buffalo. When a player comes in, players are like baby ducklings sometimes. They do imprint on their on their mothers. You know what I mean? They do. You've seen it, Russ. I mean, it's like you're amazed that a player wants to stay in the city sometimes.
No, true.
There is an imprint. Some players really imprint strongly, and he really has imprinted strongly on Buffalo. He wants that team. He's frustrated, and there comes a point at which he's going to definitely say "screw you" if they don't get better. But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. I guess we should talk about. You're going to bring up the other thing, Mike, with Buffalo. Yeah. Okay.
Oh no! You bring that up. Let me just continue on the season-ending trend. The Dallas Stars announced Alex Radulov and Ben Bishop are being shut down for the season. Radulov is going to have surgery. They're basically saying Bishop is continuing his recovery. Again, I'll be surprised if Ben Bishop ever plays again. But it sounds like they're holding out hope that he's going to come back at some point. But I'm sure that Jim Nill probably knew this before the deadline, and maybe that's the reason why they didn't make any kind of moves in terms of dumping guys like Alexiak and other players. But then maybe they think they still have a chance to sneak into the playoffs. But you're probably going to see a lot of teams where players are facing off-season surgeries, shutting these players down earlier than normal, because right now we're right where the playoffs would normally start, and the playoffs aren't starting for another month yet. So these teams may shut these players down with time to go in the regular season to get them into the operating room and then get them back on the ice as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. It really does.
Now, what was the other thing about Buffalo, Russ? You're muted.
Talk about last night. Want to talk about last night's game a little bit, maybe?
Russ, you're muted.
You're muted, Russ.
You're muted. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they brought in Jason Carmanos as an associate general manager. I looked, as a listing, or if you ask Siri, I can't find another one. So I think this is a case of a made-up position. And I think as an associate general manager, he probably doesn't have to do anything with the cap, where all the assistant general managers in this league work with the cap.
There is another general manager.
Chris Drury's associate general manager.
Okay, so when Drury got bumped up, he got bumped up to that.
And also, that was Zito's position in Columbus.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a few. Yeah.
It's a new. I think Zito was the first one that I had heard of given that term.
Okay, so Zito was the first. I know there's not many, if any, left.
It's brand new. It's definitely a new thing.
And so, again, this isn't what Kevin wanted or anybody else wanted, bringing in like a guy like Rutherford. This is bringing in a guy that is sort of like thinks like they do. Let's say it like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's weird because Kevin Allen and Tom Laidlaw invited me on their the Laidlaw Allen report this morning, and we were talking about the Sabres, and there is something with a connection between the Sabres and Terry Pegula and the Pittsburgh Penguins. You got to remember, Ted Black. I think Craig Patrick had something to do with the Sabres back a few years ago when they brought Ted Black in. Jason Botterill was an assistant GM in Pittsburgh, and now Jason Carmanos. It's like I think that you have to look around the league a little more than just Western Pennsylvania.
Well, Carmanos and Adams worked together in Carolina, and so
yes, they did.
But again, I don't think this is what the Sabres need. They needed to bring in someone with fresh eyes, not someone who has familiarity with people in that front office, because it's harder to do a tough job if you know the people. It is. To go in there and be cutthroat, it's hard to do that.
And this is more evidence of what we talked about yesterday, where the Pegulas have a certain managerial structure that they are willing to accept. And I would say that Carmanos is working for Adams, but Adams is working for the Pegulas. I mean, that's the power structure. There's no buffer. If you brought in Jim Rutherford to be a VP of hockey operations or vice, whatever, he would be in between Adams and the Pegulas.
Right.
The Pegulas want no buffer between them and the general manager.
Right. Now, if you guys want to talk about the game, go ahead. I didn't watch that game. I just know how it ended up, and
the only thing I saw about 5 minutes of the game in overtime, and the only other thing that I saw was Kevin Miller beating the crap out of Tage Thompson.
Right. Which you wouldn't think is possible because Thompson's much bigger, but it is possible.
I watched it, and I really was impressed. I mean, Buffalo really gave it all. I mean, it's going to be a hell of a last 5 games for these teams. Like these, if that continues, I mean, it's worth watching. I mean, the Sabres took the lead, then the Bruins took the lead, and the Sabres tied it late and got back into it. Do you
think that's going to happen if the Bruins get to full strength? I don't.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen if the Bruins get to full strength. But I do think that there's a lot of emotion going on through that Buffalo room. Obviously, players playing for their careers in the next year. Some of those guys might not be back at all, and that's happening. Granato's got them calm, and he has them playing in the right way. So to me, it's a fun team to watch, and that's a scary. Like I said, Boston's not going to win all 6 of those games, and last night they almost didn't win the first one.
Yeah,
that to me is still an issue. I mean, Boston's going to get healthier, yes. Hall had a couple shots. He had like 3 shots on goal. He almost scored in overtime to win it. That would have been, a nice little thing for the Bruins to like.
So is this what we're going to do with Taylor Hall now? If he gets a shot on net, we're going to report on it. Can we just report about points that he gets? He is there to produce points. If he doesn't produce points, I don't really care what he does. Like, honestly, I don't. Like, he's there to actually get points on the board. That's what he gets paid for.
Of course, no.
And I'm not getting at you. I'm just saying I have a feeling this is what we're going to hear, though. I think you're right.
No, I think for me, at least from my perspective, why I'm saying it at all is because this is the day after he got traded from one team to the other. I mean, this is the first game. I mean, in his first game as a Bruin, you're definitely going to look and see how he did. We're number 70, and he was like okay. He didn't look great. I mean, he's still a player. Confidence is shot. You can tell.
He didn't score, but he really tried.
He really tried. By the way, that podcast with Mike and Tom Laidlaw and Kevin Allen is available now on our. We actually post the Laidlaw and Allen report now on HockeyBuzz. So
there you go.
You can watch that podcast down below.
If you're not already not sick of seeing that face,
if you wonder what Mike looks like on a podcast, you can check it out there.
And this may be the last time I do it this year, because contrary to what the chat room says, I'm not obligated to watch all Flyers games, but I wanted to watch this one to see how Mantha did and to see how the Flyers would do. And
I have to admit I didn't watch this game, but go ahead, continue.
That's fine. So basically, if you wanted to watch a bunch of guys play with no heart, then that's exactly what you saw out of Philly. Mantha looked great for the Capitals, no question about it. If you watch the goal he scored, you will see why I said he has one of the best wrist shots in the league, because it almost goes through the back of the net. It has that much force. Yeah. And so if they do get him involved in the offense, this is a hell of a pickup for them. The issue with me for Philly is listening to the post game. I actually agree with Alain Vigneault. Like, one of the questions he was asked was, how do you feel the guys took it from the trade deadline? And he's like, I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. And basically, he thought before the game, he thought they still might be a playoff team. After the game, you could tell he was just totally disgusted. And honestly, it's not Vigneault's job to try and figure out what's in their head. It's his job to give them the game plan and have them carry it out. Now the question has to be, why aren't they carrying it out? Like, Kevin Hayes has one shot on goal. He hasn't scored in forever. They're trying to bring up young guys, right? They went and they're going to bring up Wade Allison at some point. That's fine. They signed Jackson Cates, the older brother of Noah Cates, who I really like. He played second-line center for UMass. I've seen him in a couple Frozen Fours. He's a pretty good player. Like, he's a decent bottom six player. They're going to bring him up. Noah will eventually get signed. He's probably got a lot of bonuses. They have to figure out which schedule to pay him, and they'll do that. But when you're bringing these guys up, right, and you're giving him – and Tanner Lisinski looks as good as I thought he would look. He's playing hard in the corners. He's making nice passes. He's not always going to score points for them because he's a new player. But that's the thing, Eck. When you're a new player there and you're trying to break in with the old core, it's hard. And I wonder now for the next, whatever, it's 15 games left, it's not even about are they going to make the playoffs. It's more about are they even going to try and train these young kids? That's the issue.
No, the issue is definitely, I watched the highlights of it. I watched a condensed game of it and all that stuff. But, yeah, to me, this looks like a team that, has been dying for help and never got any.
Right, and this is what I said to Mike.
So it really looked like a trade deadline team that was like, okay,
3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago is when Chuck Fletcher should have overpaid. And I told Mike, even if he went and picked up Yanni Hakanpää, that would have helped them tremendously because it would have given them a guy who is physical on the blue line and can skate a little bit. And that would have been better than playing Sam Morin. That would have been better than playing what they were playing and watching the season slip away. Mm-hmm. People keep giving Fletcher a pass because they're like, well, he had to see what kind of team they had. No. There was a moment where they were in the playoffs and we all saw them falling off the ledge. Yeah. And whether he tried or not, he obviously didn't try hard enough because he didn't get the job done.
Now, a deal like Russ is talking about may have been available 3 weeks ago, a minor deal for a Hakanpää, but a deal to get somebody to play on the top pairing with Provorov, that had to be done before the season started.
Yeah, that's right. And the issue that they have is like Fletcher is definitely, I'm going to say in a weird way with Comcast, he's playing it safe.
He is playing it safe. No, you're right.
But from a hockey fan's perspective, and from an old Ed Snyder perspective, this is death. Like if Snyder's around, there's just no way that he's still the GM of the team right now, and there's no way that all Flyers fans need to know that. It's getting up now that he's been Snyder's passed away like 5 years ago or so, and right, and it's been maybe 5 years before that, but before when we had real Ed Snyder because Ed Snyder was pretty sick towards the end too, but. On it, I lived through real Ed Snyder, and that was why I fell in love with the Flyers team. That team that they just did whatever they had to. Sometimes they made mistakes doing it. I'm not saying they didn't, but they went for it. Brizgalov is obviously a mistake that's brought up all the time for sure. But there were other times when they went out there, they got Forsberg, they got Roenick, they did bold things, and they didn't sit around and wait. This sitting around and waiting thing is more of a Comcast mentality, honestly. That is, anybody who's had to sit around and wait for a kid to show up, no, that's true. But it's like in general, they do by not doing anything, Fletcher can blame everything else. See, and that's what I don't like about the not doing anything thing. You can sit there and say, well, it's COVID. It was a weird year. You know, I didn't want to make any moves because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what kind of money we were making. I didn't know. There's so many things, you know, by not doing anything, it just doesn't fly.
Well, I mean, the Brizgalov example is perfect for this discussion. Okay, Ed Snyder was the one who signed off on Brizgalov, and Holmgren was the one who made the signing. They did the wrong thing, but that was acceptable. At least you tried something. They got out of it by the compliance buyout.
Yeah.
You know, but in this instance, I think Fletcher risks his job more if he goes out and does the wrong thing rather than doing nothing right now. He can say, okay, I'll do something in the offseason. And I listened to the Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick on the 31 Thoughts podcast. And basically what he said was that Fletcher was essentially doing his due diligence for the offseason in terms of feeling out other opportunities out there. Now, Russ, I agree. If they wanted to make the playoffs right now, that was not the way to approach it. But
the only reason I'm saying that is because they did, because that's what Dave Scott said. He wanted to be aggressive at the deadline. He clearly wanted to make the playoffs. He didn't even get close to what he wanted.
Yeah, well, if Scott sticks by his word on that or whatever, then Fletcher's gone. But and maybe not now, but at the end of the season, right? So
and that might have been just for public consumption. Oh, we're going to go out and we're going to do this and we're going to do that.
Right, you're absolutely right. I mean, it could have been. I mean, Comcast doesn't. That's the difference between the Flyers now and the Flyers of before. Like before, you knew what they were doing. You might not have agreed with it, but you knew what they were doing. You knew why they were doing it. Ed and all the GMs were, I mean, and if the GM wasn't, Ed would come right out and say it. He pissed a lot of the GMs off because he would say exactly what they were doing. But this is inexcusable for this organization. And
I'm going to give you one more thing, Eck.
Yeah.
Was the Flyers taxi squad as good as other teams? I'm going to contend it wasn't, and I'll give you an example. Like Nate Prosser. What did Nate Prosser ever really do other than score one goal in one game, which I think is his only NHL goal? There are teams like Montreal, right? They were bringing Corey Perry up from the taxi squad. Right. Like they were bringing up useful players.
It's all in how you look at the taxi squad, right? Like, so a lot of teams I think that played the taxi squad right and that played the taxi squad for how I feel it was intended, which is a group of players that were there because we had to play so many games in so few nights, and that you could pull people up and could get people rested and things like that, and you can make that happen. That's what Montreal's done very clearly with their taxi squad.
They're one of very few teams that did that act.
I know there are. That's the extreme. Montreal's the extreme on one end.
They essentially adopted a 28-man roster perspective, which not even Toronto has done. I mean, Toronto has done basically has used the taxi squad to hide and bury salary. Right.
And I think that they, the only chance that Fletcher has of saving his job is to bring in guys now like Cam York to just play, show the fans that there's something for the future, and see what's going to happen. Now, I don't think that's necessarily the best thing for Cam York or other guys along the line.
No, and that's what they're going to do, though.
I think if they do that, then that's a job saving tactic in my mind.
Well, but he's going to. Here's the thing. So everybody's saying he's tasked now this summer to make that big trade, right? He was tasked to make that big trade last summer and didn't do it last offseason.
What you're saying, right, Russ, and we'll get off the Flyers because I know that people want to do, but at the same time, this is kind of important and something that Russ and I have a lot of insight into, so it's worth talking about. When you're tasked by Comcast to make a big trade, you don't make small trades, and to me, that's the issue, right? So to me, he's sitting back and he's saying, okay, because the Ekholm was almost too small. Like they went for Ellis. They looked at it that way, and they sat back, and then you heard what I reported, which I know 100% because I know somebody within the organization very closely, that he kept saying, well, we're not going to give all that for Ellis because we got a shot, at a bigger guy, like at a bigger defenseman, and you can't put all your eggs in those kind of baskets. I mean, it's just not that you can't just look at trades as either you're going to get a top pairing defenseman in a trade. It's so hard to do that. It's almost impossible, and there are none out there. I mean, there are exactly enough top two defensemen probably for the league.
I have a scenario for you, Ekto. I gave this scenario to Mike. It's probably not realistic, but I gave it because I don't even think this cures the Flyers at this point. But let's just say in the offseason, the Flyers are able to trade Voracek for Dumba and make the money close, whatever. You retain this, I'll give you that, whatever, right? So now they've got their top four defensemen, and they lost Jake Voracek, which, again, he was underachieving for this team. Maybe he needs a change. But Now you have to make up Jake Voracek's points.
Yeah.
How are you doing that?
Right. And people complain about
it proves that it's more than just the one position.
Yeah.
This is a multifaceted problem now.
People complain about Voracek, and he's among their top scorers, because he does make a lot of dumb plays too. But it's just
Sure.
there's no question he's a defensive liability to the up team's extreme. He's the definition of a 4-1.
But how many defensive forwards are you going to bring in? As an example, like everybody needs to be like Scott Lawton, and they're not. I pointed out the power play. Giroux and Voracek are not doing well on the power play at all. Kevin Hayes hasn't done anything in 2 weeks. Like, there's more to do here than just that. Now, will it fall on Vigneault and they fire Vigneault? Maybe, but I wouldn't do it because I don't think Vigneault's done anything other than maybe mishandle Carter Hart at that one point in the season. But other than that, he's tried everything.
I will say this, and this is the last thing we'll say about Vigneault. The thing that's really gotten to me is the more I've dug into it, the more I don't think that the concept of being a coaching / more of a manager of your assistant coaches than a head coach yourself is the right thing for a team like this. Like, I think this team needs more of a Laviolette type personality who's going to actually be the guy who takes the responsibility, because the biggest thing this team does not do is take responsibility for itself. These players do not take responsibility, and they have a coach who's actually not taking responsibility either, because he's passing it off on his assistants. And that, and saying, and I think that when you have that whole culture of not taking responsibility, that bothers me. And I think that's all I'll say. But move on. Mike, go ahead.
We have some breaking news here. Chris Johnston is reporting that the Toronto Marlies, the AHL affiliate of the Maple Leafs, are being shut down through next Wednesday because of a COVID situation. Now, the reason that's important is because the Marlies and the Leafs practice in the same practice facility. Like one. Now they're playing separate buildings. The Coca-Cola Coliseum, or it used to be the Ricoh Coliseum, and obviously
Ricoh Coliseum is such a good building, so cool.
Yeah, and Scotiabank Arena for the Leafs, but they practice at the Ford Performance Center in Etobicoke, which they're right next to each other in terms of the ice surfaces. So, now thankfully the Leafs have their taxi squad, and all the taxi squad players and the Leaf players on their roster, they practice separately. So last night I know that they played a couple players that they normally haven't played during the year, and that might be the case where they're not going to be able to call up anybody from the Marlies because they're sort of shut down right now. So William Nylander has been out for a week because he was apparently in the presence of somebody who was a presumptive positive, and he's tested negative. So, right now COVID is blowing up in Ontario. Like it's gone up.
It's
gone from the West to East.
It's double.
Yeah, and I think we should talk about the Greca thing that you heard.
Yeah, Don LaGreca had said, a friend of mine texted me. Don's actually a softball teammate of mine, 1 year anyhow. Nice guy.
And he's a Rangers.
He's a Ranger announcer. He's out of ESPN.
Every time I see him, he's like, "Oh, I love hockey, but it's great to see you." He's a really big hockey buzz.
And basically, you said that when the North teams get out of the playoffs, they'll be playing in either Buffalo or Detroit. So there won't be a Buffalo, or there won't be a bubble, but they'll be playing in the U.S. And they have to at this point because the U.S. is much safer than Canada is as far as for passing around the virus. And U.S. isn't like immune to it, but it is a lot safer, and probably by then even more safer.
Are they going to let Toronto fans come down to those games?
I doubt it.
No, because they would have to quarantine for 2 weeks to go back.
Right.
So, but there are a number of Leaf fans in Western New York and throughout the lower 48 who probably would travel to Buffalo if they could get playoff tickets for a conference.
Yeah, just go to the Anchor Bar; they're all there.
No, they'll be killed if they go there. But
there are some Leaf fans that would come in if they find that to absolutely be true. They come in like a week earlier and they stay for.
They might do it. Yeah.
There's definitely some Leaf fans that'll do that. There's. Sure. I know Leaf fans. They're nice.
But the the reason for Buffalo and Detroit, I'm assuming it'll be, if it was Montreal or Toronto, Buffalo is closer geographically, and if it's Winnipeg or Edmonton, then Detroit. I'm surprised it wouldn't be Minnesota instead of Detroit, but Detroit's a brand new building, so the state of the art.
In the playoffs too. The Wild are in the playoffs. I think the idea is to have not to have
that's true.
So I think
Detroit's guaranteed to not be in the playoffs, right? And so
it's better to have them. Better have them in the closest place to them that's not in the playoffs. I think is what they'll be doing.
But here's and I retweeted something that Arthur Staple tweeted this morning. Islanders players most of them got the first shot of the vaccine in the last couple days, and again, that seems to be common throughout the league. Whereas most of the players who are in their 20s and 30s were eligible to get the vaccine because of the plentiful quantities in the U.S.
Right.
That still is not the case in Canada. I believe right now, and somebody Flamester can straighten me out. I think right now in Canada it's still 65 and over. And I heard something that like somebody gets the first shot. It's 4 months until they get the second shot. That's how much of a crunch there is in Canada right now regarding the vaccine. I'm sorry, if I'm Gary Bettman, I'm shipping the vaccine to the Canadian teams.
It's a tough call. We talked about this yesterday with Kevin, and then I got a call from the NHL afterwards from like a really anonymous guy who wanted to talk to me about the vaccine thing. And so I did have a little bit about this. He wouldn't address Canada because I asked the same question. I said, this is a U.S. company. We talked about this on the show yesterday. I said, these guys get paid in U.S. dollars. That's one thing that makes them a U.S. company. I was trying to think of, and they
but they're incorporated in New York. They're incorporated in New York.
Right. Every team is. So, I mean, this situation is, really interesting. But he did tell me that he expects all of the U.S. hockey teams to be vaccinated for their first shot by the end of this week, for sure.
Sure, but you know what else I could tell you?
Most of them already are. He said about 2/3 of them already were.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we saw the Rangers. Some of them were public about it. What we could see, though, is when those teams come out of the North, they might get vaccinated before they even start playing.
Yeah, but then
because they'd be in the U.S. at that point.
But Russ, then the problem is that and as we've seen with the Moderna or the Pfizer or even the Johnson & Johnson, everybody is having symptoms afterward, and you're going to go into a playoff scenario where you get the first shot or the second shot of the vaccine and you're having symptoms while you're in a playoff race. It's better to do it now because
I'm not saying it's not better, but I'm saying if there's if they have 1 or 2 days before the playoffs start and everybody crosses the border and goes to an American city, I could see it happening.
Yeah, David in our chat says 55 right now for the age, and in hotspots 8. Now, okay, I mean, I don't know if Toronto is considered a hotspot. I would assume it is because the rates have exploded from around 1,300 or 1,400 a day to over 4,000.
Yeah, and British Columbia is in bad shape right now too.
So
way worse even than that. So. Yeah, I really hope. I really feel for all of you up in Canada who watch the show. I hope like I said, I said in my blog today. You guys were amazing. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have had playoffs last year. The way you guys handled the early pandemic and everything like that. And it sucks that our country, and this is my opinion, and other people don't agree with me, I'm sure, but it sucks that our country isn't helping you out more. At this point with the vaccines, that's how I feel about it. And I know not everybody agrees with that, but I really think that. You're such a good neighbor, so important. And I know hockey fans definitely. I mean, we were talking about. I was talking to somebody about the Northern League and how cool it is. It's for the Canadian teams to play each other. It really has bothered me that I'm not seeing any Canadian teams this year down here. Like it really does because those Canadian teams
I agree.
There's such a thing to them. They always have like there's. I mean, all of them. But especially like the big ones like Montreal and Toronto and Edmonton. For me, like they just have such a a cliche, whatever you want to wear, not cliche, but just a big thing for me down here. Just the best way I can say it, which is not very good. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. I think that it's a shame. So I really hope everything gets better in Canada soon. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, how much it's upset me that the border has been shut, and I understand the reasons why. But if we get the vaccine to people in Canada quicker, then we can open the borders quicker. That's my philosophy.
The only thing I'll say, Mike, is I don't think the border is going to be open all summer because I'm hearing It's not going to be until August until a lot of people start getting it.
Yeah.
And so we're lucky if the border gets open for next hockey season. I know we keep talking about this like it's going to end, and it may not.
No, we'll let's hope so. But
it will eventually, but it might not.
Eventually it will.
It might not by the beginning of the hockey season. And all thought we kind of all felt like that would definitely be the case. But I agree with you as far as the northern parts of it, at least. It's going to stay. It's going to hang on. It's going to hang on for a while.
Let me just mention quickly. David Rittich played last night his first game for the Leafs against the Flames, which was a little weird for him. He was still wearing his red pads and red glove, and had
he traveled in the team plane. I thought that was awesome.
Well, yeah, they were on their way to Toronto on deck.
Yeah.
So they had a parachute off the plane halfway.
Imagine that must have been just a great time. Like, if I was a goalie, that would be so much fun to suddenly, because when you play with your team all the time, and practice with your team, you always want to play against them. You never get a chance to.
Apparently, they were razzing him on the plane, and Matthew Tkachuk made him feel welcome as a member of the opposition by spraying him with snow in the first period. He did play.
One thing I want to mention, quick, Mike, and then I'll let you get into the game. In the old days, there were many times that rival teams like the Rangers and Flyers would be on the same team, but on the same plane, but they hated each other. That's all.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I'm sure they had a couple security guards keeping the sections separated because they probably want to kill each other. Just one thing, because the Flames won 3-2. Rittich played well, but here's something to monitor for the Leafs. I think they're 2 for their last 38 on the power play. They've scored 2 power play goals in a month. And this is a team that was at 40% in terms of percentage for their power play at the beginning of the season. And it wasn't like the first 10 games. It was like, a quarter of the year they were operating at that pace. Teams have adjusted, they've adjusted their tactics to play against the Leafs power play. The Leafs have not adjusted, and if their power play continues at that pace, it's going to be troublesome for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, big time troublesome. I totally agree.
Mike, who's in charge of the power play, coach wise?
Manny Malhotra,
and he's a first year guy, right?
Well, he was in charge of the power play in Vancouver, so
but first year for them.
First year for them, yes.
So if they have trouble with the power play in the playoffs, Manny could be in trouble, right?
I don't think so. I think
you don't think so. You think they would overlook that?
No, I think he's done a really good job working with the forwards and working on faceoffs and things of that nature. He's well liked. I don't think he's.
I hope that's the case. I like Manny, but at some point they're going to look for a fall guy if this continues, though.
Yeah, if it was Dave Haxtell, he'd be in trouble.
Yeah. Someone pointed out to me the Oilers don't play for a week, which is really interesting. That is interesting. A bizarre thing. They played on Saturday, they don't play again until Saturday. They might play Vancouver on Friday. That would be 6 days, but that's still up in the air.
Well, this is the thing that's interesting. So Vancouver is opening up their practice facility on Friday. That's for the first time. Okay, and I'm looking at Toronto's schedule, and they're scheduled to play Vancouver the middle of next week. Saturday and Monday in Vancouver.
Right.
You don't see those games being played.
Well, I think they're going to have to. Based on what they're doing, I think they're going to have to. They have to figure out if they can.
24 hours after you've been
but the Oilers that day, that game's still on the NHL schedule when you look at it. Friday.
Breaking news. Go ahead. Today at the training facility of the Seattle Kraken, they are pouring the ice slabs.
Wow. There you go. They should do what they did in Minnesota. I really love that. And they bring out, you grab a glass full of the pond that you grew up skating on and dump it into there.
I like that. Or I really think they should have consulted you, considering the job you've done in your backyard to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
To monitor this, but they didn't do it.
If you consult me, you not only get a rink, you get like a fox and mole habitat as well out of it. It's pretty the whole thing is just beyond just a rink. It's a full 20. It's 12 months a year fun for the family. It's constant. All right, we got to go. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you again tomorrow.